Number 5. Star Tiger was one of 3 enlarged and improved versions of the Avro Tudor, designated Tudor 4. It had made 11 transatlantic flights, a total of 575 hours flying time, since its initial test flight on November 4, 1947. On the morning of January 28, 1948, the crew and passengers boarded Star Tiger at Lisbon only to be forced to return to the airport waiting room when the pilot, Captain Brian W. McMillan, told them that the port inner engine needed some attention. The aircraft took off 2.5 hours later, and made what was intended to be a 75-minute refueling stop at Santa Maria in the Azores. However, the reported weather was so poor that Captain McMillan decided they should stop over until the next day. The following day, January 29, Star Tiger took off for the next leg of its flight to Bermuda despite strong winds. An Avro Lancastrian belonging to BSAA piloted by Frank Griffin took off an hour ahead of the Star Tiger, and Griffin had agreed to radio weather information back to Star Tiger. Star Tiger took off at 15:34 and soon after takeoff was lashed by heavy rain and strong winds. At 3 o'clock Captain Griffin aboard the Lancastrian amended his ETA from 3:56 to 5 o'clock. At 3:04 Radio Officer Robert Tuck aboard Star Tiger requested a radio bearing from Bermuda, but the signal was not strong enough to obtain an accurate reading. Tuck repeated the request 11 minutes later, and this time the Bermuda radio operator was able to obtain a bearing of 72 degrees, accurate to within 2 degrees. The Bermuda operator transmitted this information, and Tuck acknowledged receipt at 3:17. This was the last communication with the aircraft. The Bermuda radio operator tried at 4:05 to contact Star Tiger, again without success, and after trying again at 4:40 he declared a state of emergency. He had heard no distress message, and neither had anyone else, even though many receiving stations were listening on Star Tiger's frequency. The U.S. Air Force personnel operating the airfield immediately organized a rescue effort that lasted for 5 days despite worsening weather. 26 aircraft flew 882 hours in total, and surface craft also conducted a search, but no signs of Star Tiger or her 31 passengers and crew were ever found. Number 4. British South American Airways Lancastrian plane went missing on August 2, 1947, while finishing its final leg of a connecting flight from Buenos Aires to Santiago. Investigators and air traffic control centers alike were mystified, as the last communication received by a Chilean Air Force operator was the cryptic message Stendek, which was long believed to be mistyped. However, over 50 years later, in the late 1990s, pieces of wreckage began to emerge in the Andes Mountains, and in 2000 various body parts from the flight's passengers were found, well preserved by glacial ice. Despite the circulating rumors, ranging from alien abduction to Nazi spies and stolen gold, an in-depth investigation uncovered that inclement weather had caused the crash and determined that the most probable meaning of the strange communication was based on a World War II code, deciphered as severe turbulence encountered, now descending, emergency crash landing. The last word in Stardust's final Morse code transmission to Santiago Airport, Stendek, was received by the airport control tower 4 minutes before its planned landing and repeated twice. It has never been satisfactorily explained. Number 3. It is believed that shortly before sunset, likely to be 5 p.m. local time, on May 25, 2003, 2 men boarded the aircraft. One of them was an American pilot and flight engineer, Ben C. Padilla. The other, John M. Mutantu, was a hired mechanic from the Republic of the Congo. Neither man was certified to fly a Boeing 727, which normally requires 3 aircrew. Both men had been working with Angolan mechanics to get the aircraft flight ready. Padilla is believed by U.S. authorities to have been at the controls. The aircraft began taxiing without communicating with the control tower. It maneuvered erratically and entered a runway without clearance. The tower officers tried to make contact, but there was no response. With no lights, the aircraft took off, heading southwest over the Atlantic Ocean before disappearing. Neither the aircraft nor the two men have been found. Many theories exist about what happened to the aircraft. Some reports suggest there was only one person on board the aircraft at the time, some suggest there may have been more than one. Reports leaked as part of the United States diplomatic cables leak indicate that the United States searched for the aircraft in multiple countries after the event. A regional security officer searched for it in Sri Lanka without result. A ground search was also conducted by diplomats stationed in Nigeria at multiple airports without finding it. The telegram from Nigeria also states that the diplomats did not consider likely a landing of the 727 at a major airport, since the aircraft could have been easily identified. No trace of the aircraft has since been found. Number 2. Air France Flight 447 was a scheduled passenger international flight from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil to Paris, France, which crashed on June 1, 2009. The Airbus A330, operated by Air France, entered an aerodynamic stall, from which it did not recover and crashed into the Atlantic Ocean at 2:14 UTC, killing all 228 passengers, air crew, and cabin crew aboard the aircraft. The Brazilian Navy removed the first major wreckage and 2 bodies from the sea within 5 days of the accident, but the initial investigation by France's BEA was hampered because the aircraft's flight recorders were not recovered from the ocean floor until May 2011, nearly 2 years later. In addition to the routine position reports, FGZCP's centralized maintenance system sent a series of messages via ACARS in the minutes immediately prior to its disappearance. These messages, sent to prepare maintenance workers on the ground prior to arrival, were transmitted between 2:10 UTC and 2:15 UTC, and consisted of 5 failure reports and 19 warnings. Until the black box flight recorders were recovered 2 years later, these messages represented the only recorded data available to the investigators. They offered a tantalizing but incomplete picture of what had happened to Flight 447. The BEA's final report, released at a news conference on July 5, 2012, concluded that the aircraft crashed after temporary inconsistencies between the airspeed measurements, likely due to the aircraft's pitot tubes being obstructed by ice crystals, caused the autopilot to disconnect, after which the crew reacted incorrectly and ultimately caused the aircraft to enter an aerodynamic stall, from which it did not recover. Number 1. Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 was a scheduled international passenger flight that disappeared on March 8, 2014 while flying from Kuala Lumpur International Airport, Malaysia, to its destination, Beijing Capital International Airport in China. The planned flight duration was 5 hours, 34 minutes, which would consume an estimated 37,200 kilograms, 82,000 pounds, of jet fuel. The aircraft carried 49,100 kilograms, 108,200 pounds, of fuel, including reserves, allowing an endurance of 7 hours, 31 minutes. At 24:42 MYT, Flight 370 took off from runway and was cleared by Air Traffic Control, ATC, to climb to flight level 180 approximately 18,000 feet, 5,500 m, on a direct path to navigational waypoint Zahrie. Voice analysis has determined that the first officer communicated with ATC while the flight was on the ground and that the captain communicated with ATC after departure. Shortly after departure, the flight was transferred from the airport's ATC to Lumpur Radar Air Traffic Control. At 24:46, Lumpur Radar cleared Flight 370 to flight level 350 approximately 35,000 feet, 10,700 m. At 1:01, Flight 370's crew reported to Lumpur radar that they had reached flight level 350, which they confirmed again at 1:08. The aircraft's final automated position report and last transmission was sent at 1:06 MYT. Among the data provided in the message was total fuel remaining 43,800 kg, 96,600 pounds. The final verbal contact with air traffic control occurred at 1 hour 19 minutes and 30 seconds, when Captain acknowledged a handover by Lumpur radar to Ho Chi Minh ACC. The crew was expected to contact air traffic control in Ho Chi Minh City as the aircraft passed into Vietnamese airspace, just north of the point where contact was lost. The captain of another aircraft attempted to reach the crew of Flight 370 just after 1:30 using the international distress frequency to relay Vietnamese air traffic control's request for the crew to contact them. The captain said he was able to establish contact, but only heard mumbling and static. Calls made to Flight 370's cockpit at 2:39 and 7:13 were unanswered but acknowledged by the aircraft's satellite data unit. The watch supervisor at Kuala Lumpur ACC activated the Kuala Lumpur Aeronautical Rescue Coordination Center at 5:30, over 4 hours after communication was lost with Flight 370. Malaysia Airlines issued a media statement at 7:24 MYT, 1 hour after the scheduled arrival time of the flight at Beijing, stating that contact with the flight had been lost by Malaysian ATC at 2:40 and that the government had initiated search and rescue operations. The time when contact was lost was later corrected to 1:21. Neither the crew nor the aircraft's communication systems relayed a distress signal, indications of bad weather, or technical problems before the aircraft vanished from radar screens. The news media reported several sightings of an aircraft fitting the description of the missing Boeing 777. On March 19, 2014, CNN reported that witnesses, including fishermen, an oil rig worker and people on the Kuta Huvadhu atoll in the Maldives saw the missing airliner. An oil rig worker claimed he saw a burning object in the sky that morning, a claim credible enough for the Vietnamese authorities to send a search and rescue mission. An Indonesian fisherman reported witnessing a plane crash near the Malacca Straits. The aircraft has not been recovered, and the cause of the disappearance remains unknown.